When will Switch 2 release? This vexed question has been on everybody's lips for years, and this channel has swung and missed in the past. At this point, I think the broad landing zone is clear enough, and it's only nailing down the specific release date that is tricky. After all, here is what we know. We know that Nintendo Switch 2 experience dates are booked for all through April and May, with a sole event on the 1st of June and the Hong Kong and Taipei dates yet to be announced. We know that Nintendo Switch's 2017 events had a similar pattern. The American tour included a stop in San Francisco on the 3rd to the 5th of March. This was, of course, the first 3 days of the Switch's launch, and San Francisco was, at the time, a base of Nintendo of America's operations, so it made some sense to have a major event close to home when they were coordinating such a massive launch. It's not quite so clear that there is a similar location that will be quite as favourable this year, however. The 25th and 26th of April Berlin event and the 26th and 27th of April Tokyo equivalent would be major ones for Nintendo, but these do seem far too early. I think the minimum we can expect is 30 days after the 2nd of April Direct, if not more. All that said, with Nintendo of Europe based in Germany and Nintendo having a good base in Tokyo as well as their home city of Kyoto, it is curious, and I think there's a small but real chance, let's say 30%, that they will at least use this date for some kind of bigger announcement. After all, at this point, they will have had their first major international event in Paris, home to NERD, and then done a bit of touring around the world. If people have started to get the gist of the Switch 2 by now and reporting has started to trail off, they may have some major push around this time to spike interest back up. And so if the marketing teams are needed, then having the Nintendo experiences be in Tokyo and Berlin would probably be helpful. Mind you, Nintendo of Europe's offices are in Frankfurt, which is 5 hours drive away from Berlin, but in the scheme of things, it's perhaps not such a distance. As for what this event could be, I wouldn't necessarily expect a major new feature. I think by then we'll know everything there is to know, but it could be the launch of a major new trailer or a significant third-party game announcement. For first-party stuff, I'm less sure, but it's not impossible that they could surprise debut a new title as a way to surprise and delight Switch 2 fans. It's rather curious that there's a big gap between the 11th of May and the 31st of May in terms of the Nintendo Switch 2 experience schedules. The first few are each 1 to 2 weeks apart, but then there's a 3-week gap between the Melbourne and Amsterdam events ending the 11th of May and the Seoul event starting on the 31st of May. Note that the Switch did not launch in South Korea day and date with the rest of the world, but actually did not even debut until the 1st of December 2017. South Korea is a fairly big market for Nintendo, but is not one of their major international territories, with their regional branch reportedly having only 10 people after they laid off 80% of their staff in 2016. It seems like Nintendo would have had time to build up a bit more during the glory days of the Switch, but it's still a very different market from the other larger territories, and so it is plausible that they might decide to focus on Japan, America, and Europe first, and then pivot to South Korea as soon as possible afterwards. If this were the case, it would suggest that their South Korean tour date could well be after the Switch 2 releases. I think at this point there's a 50% chance, therefore, that Switch 2 releases before June. Now, I've always been a little skeptical about May as a release month for a console by Nintendo for a few reasons. One is that historically they have always steered clear of May. April saw the first Game & Watch, the Game Boy Light, and the Satellaview, plus it was the original planned date for Nintendo 64. June has seen over many years the Color TV game, the Nintendo 64, the new 2DS XL, and the Super Game Boy. In nigh on 50 years of releasing consoles, May has never been a favoured month by Nintendo, and my assumption has always been that this is to do with the Golden Week holidays at the end of April and the beginning of May. It makes sense to have a console on sale going into Golden Week. It makes sense to have a console on sale sometime after, once people's wallets have recovered a little. It's less clear that waiting until after an intense spending period and then dropping a console on consumers is the best strategy. However, that is only an assumption, and there are some reasons to think that it might not apply here. For one thing, we can expect initial demand of the console to be extremely high. Nintendo have admitted as much with their comments on scalping. Therefore, they could pretty much put it anywhere on their schedule and still expect a strong start. Moreover, Nintendo has some history, particularly recently, of a major sales period for their games on Switch being June and July. June is traditionally a Mario month with Mario Tennis Aces, Super Mario Maker 2, Mario Golf Super Rush, and Mario Strikers Battle League dropping in this space, while July tends to be reserved for not necessarily absolutely huge, but still fairly significant titles, or at least content rich ones that will keep players busy over Nintendo's summer break. Past examples include Xenoblade Chronicles 3, Fire Emblem Three Houses, and Pikmin 4. So, if Nintendo want to stick with a winning formula, they may decide to have a major and probably Mario themed June, followed by a big title for the summer in July. But this means that there's nothing really stopping them from launching earlier. If they're going to get a big boost from a launch, why not ride that wave and then get their usual June and July sales spikes in addition? Okay, so let's drill in to the possibilities. We're going to assume, for argument's sake, that we are talking about a Thursday. Theoretically, Nintendo could release in any day of the week, but they've now got into a rhythm for over a year of releasing games on Thursdays, and just as they transitioned to Fridays on the Wii U before making that the prime launch day of choice for the Nintendo Switch, I feel it is unlikely that they will divert from this course now. It also seems inconceivable to me that they will launch the Switch 2 presentation in April and drop the console within a month. The logistics of that are just mind-boggling, so let's put a pin in any April release date. If we go by precedent, the Switch 1 launch event to the release was 7 weeks exactly, and 7 weeks after gives us the 22nd of May 2025. We will come back to that date for other reasons in a bit. Now, if they're launching simultaneously worldwide and they're doing events prior to launch, they will likely need to launch in June, so that means the 5th of June is the earliest date we could expect to see the machine. It seems somewhat unlikely to me that their final climactic stop will be Seoul. Nothing against the wonderful South Korea, but from Nintendo's point of view, it doesn't feel as central to their international aspirations. Still, if they released on the 5th of June, that gives a 3-week window before an end June game on the 26th of June, and then they could have another 3 or 4 week window until an end of July title. This definitely feels like the kind of rhythm we could expect to see and therefore can't be ruled out. 9 weeks would be a longer ramp up than the original Switch, but then it kind of makes sense if they want more time to differentiate it from its predecessor, whereas the original Switch's appeal was enormously clear from that first trailer, and so arguably it might have needed fewer weeks to be shown. On the other hand, can we see them going for a shorter time period? Early May is still in the period around Golden Week, so asking retail outlets to do a handbrake turn from Golden Week sales to stocking Switch 2 may be overambitious. There are no obvious major dates to avoid in this month that I can see, which means I think that we should come back to the strong possibility of the 22nd of May 2025. I should at this point credit YouTuber and a viewer of this channel what they should do, who for a very long time now has been advocating the 22nd of May 2025 as a date because of one specific oddity. The date in Japanese is 25522, in the US format 52225, and in the UK format 22525. However, given that 5 often looks like a reverse of 2, what they should do noted that you could have some kind of animation where the numbers twisted around and used graphical frippery to give us a row of 2s. Even without that, the date of the 22nd seems like the best shot at creating a memorable date of the kind that Sega managed when they released Sonic 2 on a Tuesday and called it, of course, Sonic Tuesday all those years ago. And that would be fine, except that Nintendo has already got a major event booked in for this very date, specifically the opening of the Orlando branch of Super Nintendo World, complete with the Donkey Kong Country area. This is the third version of Super Nintendo World after the Japanese and Californian versions, and allows them to have major theme parks on both North American coasts and in Japan. On first impression, it seems that it would be an odd choice indeed to launch such a major event and yet have so many of the park's day one customers distracted by a new console launch. Then again, Nintendo is unlikely to be able to easily manage day one traffic anyway without big queues, so arguably there is not much of a threat if it causes people to arrive at a slightly slower pace than they might otherwise. It does risk overshadowing the launch of the Switch 2 or the opening of the theme park, depending on which one you're more interested in, but there seems to be a strange symmetry here with the recent announcement, dare I say a confluence of events, whereby the Switch 2 announcement was paired with the release of Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. It always struck me as rather weird, given that they announced the release date of Donkey Kong Country Returns HD relatively late on, so it's not like they couldn't have moved it internally if they so wished. And I'm struck that on the Nintendo website, they have a banner for Donkey Kong next to a feature on Switch 2, thereby linking the two in the minds of visitors to their website. Is there a chance that yet again the Switch 2 could outshine DK by eclipsing the launch of a park with Donkey Kong rides? And if so, is there a broader purpose? It occurs to me that if Mario Kart is perceived as a lock for June, and perhaps let's say Pokemon Legends ZA is the game for July, there is still room for a major launch game. This is unlikely to be another Mario, as Mario's other month of choice is generally October to shore up the holiday window. Metroid Prime 4 Beyond is in many ways the obvious candidate for this, with the mouse controls being something that could easily benefit playability in the Prime series. But Metroid also has a history of September or October releases, and it would do the job of being a major Switch 1 title for the holiday period. So, if you're going to use the Switch 2 launch as a vehicle for an underperforming series to pitch for its Breath of the Wild moment, why not choose Donkey Kong? In this case, launching at a Donkey Kong theme park area would make perfect sense. Japan already has a Donkey Kong Country area after all. In 2017, the San Francisco team launched the Switch in their own backyard, but perhaps the Mushroom Kingdom and the Donkey Kong Country is truly Nintendo's backyard this time. There is one other curiosity. The Donkey Kong Country ride opened on a Wednesday in Japan. The Japan park opened on a Thursday, the California park opened on a Friday. The 22nd of May is of course a Thursday, just like the game console release schedule. Now there's not a load to read into here, as Thursday is a perfectly normal day to release a game or open a park, and it kind of makes sense if Nintendo's promotional calendar is oriented around Thursdays to open their park on that date. I think if you were to guess which day it would be, given previous events on Wednesday and Friday, you'd think Thursday would be well more than a 1 in 7 shot. Still, it certainly doesn't refute the notion of a 22nd of May Switch 2 launch either, given that it ties in with the specific date that they usually choose for their games. All of which makes me feel that if there's one leading contender in terms of dates, it is the 22nd of May. From the 7-week blowout to launch precedent, to the possibility to sync up with the theme park schedule, to the fact that it allows for a June and a July game, and recalling that a 3-week gap in the Switch 2 promotional schedule around May exists, it does feel completely plausible. While identifying a specific date within that range feels like a bit of a mug's game, I do think the 22nd of May feels the likeliest candidate. Either way, it is awesome to think that in a few short months we could finally be playing the newest Nintendo console. Do check out these videos on screen or the Patreon for more. Please do like, share, comment and subscribe, and I shall see you next time for another Nintendo Forecast.